So, welcome to the Rediscovery channel, where each week myself, Stilger, and my friend Ivor tell each other a different story. And the idea is that we rediscover history together this way. And Ivor, the recording actually just cut off, but we were talking about somebody called Robert Guiscard. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, although he was a Frenchman.
Yeah, French names are tough unless you're fluent in that language.
Yeah, it's Guiscard. And as you mentioned, you were right. He was part of the Crusades, or at least
And
he's
was he the
tied.
guy that found the Lance of Longinus? That's what I was wondering.
Yes.
So it was him?
No, I don't know. I don't know. So we have to find this out. So let me actually get into my story.
Yeah.
And I have to profess, like, I knew very little about this whole topic. It's a topic I found very interesting. But it's just one of those topics that's, I guess, not really that important in the Netherlands. But yeah, he was a guy that lived from the year 1015 to 1085. And he was a Norman adventurer. And he was remembered for the conquest of southern Italy and Sicily. He took that back from the Saracens, the Muslims. Saracens.
Oh, maybe your way is right. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Always say Saracen.
I'm not sure either. I think we also, like, you say Celtic, I say Celtic.
Yeah, people tell me it could be either way. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So initially, I actually wanted to talk today about the Normans. And believe it or not, I don't really know that much about the Normans. I've been to Normandy in France, and I walked around the city called Rouen, which is actually a beautiful medieval city. It looks like it comes straight out of like a Robin Hood movie. But I knew about the origin of the Northmen, that they are settlers, Viking settlers. And how through the Battle of Hastings in 1066, where William the Conqueror, he put England under Norman control. And I also know that this played a role in making, England fall under the influence of mainland Europe, versus before it was under the influence more of the Danes and the Norse. The Norwegians.
Wait, England, before the Normans invaded, the Anglo-Saxons, like that's where the term English comes from. And of course, the Anglo-Saxons, they also originated from the area of Denmark, and they came in after I believe it was like after the Romans pulled out is when those people started coming in. And then the Vikings and the Normans were attacking England about the same time. So the Anglo-Saxons couldn't deal with both groups at the same time. They were going to lose to one or the other.
Yeah, and we talked about this in this story about Harald Hardrada, the last Viking king.
Yeah.
How he was caught by surprise, and otherwise, if the Battle of Hastings had gone differently, at least when it comes to the language, like England and Old English and Norwegian were actually very close to each other, closely related, and culturally there were a lot of strong ties there as well. But because, ironically, I guess, because these offspring, these Northmen, in the French part, the northern part of France, when they beat England, they kind of tied England into becoming part of mainland Europe, and they brought Romanesque language and culture back to England. Of course, the Romans were there previously.
Yeah, that's what causes the transition from Old English to Middle Period English, was that French influence.
Yeah. So the 11th century Benedictine monk and historian Goffredo Malaterra characterized the Normans following, quote, especially marked by cunning, despising their own inheritance in the hope of winning a greater. eager after both gain and dominion, given to imitation of all kinds, holding a certain mean between lavishness and greediness that is perhaps uniting, as they certainly did, these two seemingly opposite qualities. Their chief men were specially lavish through their desire of good report. They were, moreover, a race skillful in flattery, given to the study of eloquence, so that the very boys were orators, a race altogether unbridled unless held firmly down by the yoke of justice. They were enduring of toil, hunger, and cold, whenever fortune laid it on them, given to hunting and hawking, delighting in the pleasure of horses, and of all the weapons and garb of war. So, unquote.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty interesting people. So, um,
Sounding
so
too.
it's not too flattering, but yes, they were definitely a warrior people. Yeah, so the Viking settlers in northern France, despite their humbling beginnings, they had a major impact on European culture and history, and they brought the Roman style of architecture and language with them to England, which can still be seen in many Norman castles, fortresses, and keeps today. So, for example, such as the White Tower in England. And they also brought this, what do you call it? This Gothic style of fortresses. They brought it all across Europe. They were known for their battle prowess, and after the adoption of Christianity, they became devout Catholics and feudal. They also became very feudal because that's how they were given their position in northern France of what is now Normandy in Europe, the province. So their influence was felt all over Europe, from Ireland, Scotland, Byzantine to the Baltics, and even northern Africa. And that is because they were particularly rich, and they were very devout in their religion, and they were so eager to fight that they played an important role in the Crusades. So your story might be true, as well as the reconquest of Spain. So,
how did they help with the reconquest of Spain?
Well, they were mercenaries, and they actually helped fight a lot of those battles.
Okay. So I guess the Spanish crown, or actually for a while it would have been at least two separate realms. They must have hired them.
Yeah, and they were also at times closely allied to the Pope. So the Pope would also get them to fight off the Muslims and retake the land in Spain as well. So yeah, I didn't know that much about the Normans or the Northmen. To be honest, for me it was just a province in France that I've been to, and I know some people from Normandy, and they have a funny way of speaking French, and that's about it.
The first time oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. First time you heard about them?
The first time I heard about them, I was a little kid, actually, back, I think like 8 or 9 years old. There's an old movie with Errol Flynn about Robin Hood, and they kept talking about Normans and Saxons. And in the movie, like, it's set during the Crusades, when Richard the Lionheart was out crusading, his brother kind of usurps the throne. And I didn't get exactly what the difference was between Normans and Saxons at that time, other than the fact that the Normans were the ruling class. And I'm like, what's the difference, because in the United States, we have like actual different races where the difference is obvious. But then in high school, I found out what the Normans were. And maybe you want to include in your slideshow, there's this thing called the Bayeux Tapestry, or Bayeux or Bayeux. I don't know how to say those French words, but yeah, maybe it chronicles how they came and they took over England. And then for a while, of course, they became the ruling class and they spoke French. but then eventually they assimilated, not right away, but eventually they assimilated to speak English as their primary language. And of course, the wars like Joan of Arc and the 100 Years' War and all that stuff has to do with the French crown trying to wrest control of Normandy from the English. Because they're not going to just, like the Normans that became the ruling class, even after they assimilate to English culture, they're not just going to give that territory back.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think it's pronounced the Bayeux. I would guess. I had like 6 months of French. The tapestry, which is like an embroidered cloth, which was nearly 70 meters or 230 feet long, and 50 centimeters, 20 inches tall, which depicts the events leading up to the Norman conquest of England. And Richard Lionheart was also a Norman, actually, or descendant of the Normans.
Yeah.
Yes. They adopted this French quite quickly, even though they were Vikings, mostly from Danish. No, actually, mostly from Norwegian and also from Danish descent. And they just became this ruling class. Then they adopted the French language, although with like a heavy dialect. Then, of course, later on, the French during the 100-Year War. The Norman in England, they adopted their own language. But yeah, so they were like this ruling warrior caste, and they played an important role in all these battles. And they would also send out many knights because they had a lot of knights that were keen to fight, but that they didn't own a lot of property. And we talked about that in a previous episode about the greatest knight of all time as well. So they would go and try and fight for others. And the Normans were particularly keen to do so as well. And there's just so much to talk about because they played they had an important cultural impact. They played an important role in the Crusades, where they fought more valiantly than anybody else, and they were asked to stay. But they basically fought all over the world, the world at the time. Like they were in Northern Africa, they were in the Balkan countries, they were in modern day Turkey. They were fighting a lot of battles, and there was just so much to talk about. And honestly, I won't be able to do justice to it all because you could probably just be a professor. I'm sure you could. There are professors that just go into Norman culture and history, but maybe I can be like a gateway drug to the bigger story and encourage people to learn more about them because they were pretty interesting people. And instead, I wanted to focus on one of the Normans, this Robert Guiscard. I might be butchering that again. If I am, I'm sorry. But this is the Norman adventurer who took southern Italy. And he also took Sicily back from the Saracens. So I just thought I'd talk a little bit more about him, one of those adventurers. So let's start off with his story.
Okay.
According to the Byzantine historian Anna Komnena, he left Normandy with only 5 mounted riders and 30 followers on foot. And then upon arriving in Longobardia in the year 1047, he became the chief of a roving robber band.
Tell them, we got to tell the viewers, Longobardia, what are we talking about in terms of, I think that's northern Italy, right? Or no?
It is in Italy. I actually believe it's different parts of Italy. I do believe he actually landed in the middle of the western middle part of Italy, if I'm not mistaken. But I would have to check that.
They must have. Yeah, we put it in the slideshow.
Yeah, because the Langobards were just another tribe that were taking over Italy, a Germanic tribe.
And what it means is long beards, if you translate it to English. They were a Germanic tribe known for their huge beards, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, in Dutch, baard is a beard.
Yeah.
Long is it's long. Well, yeah, yeah. So see, this lady, this Byzantine historian, female historian, she left a physical description of Guiscard. Quote: "This Robert was Norman by birth, of obscure origins, with an overbearing character, a thoroughly villainous mind. He was a brave fighter, very cunning in his assaults on the wealth and power of great men. In achieving his aims, absolutely inexorable, diverting criticism by incontrovertible argument." So he was good at holding debates as well. So he wasn't just good with fighting with swords, he was also good at fighting with words. He was a man of immense stature, surpassing even the biggest men. He had a ruddy complexion, fair hair, broad shoulders, eyes that all but shot out sparks of fire. In a well-built man, one looks for breadth here and slimness there. In him, all was admirably well-proportioned and elegant. Homer remarked of Achilles that when he shouted, his hearers had the impression of a multitude in uproar. But Robert's bellow, so they say, put tens of thousands to flight. So he was an alpha, I would say.
Alpha Chad.
Yeah. So Robert, he got it going on. Even though he was a humble background and he didn't have a lot, except for a couple guys and some horses, he managed to land a good wedding with Alberada of Buonalbergo, and she was the paternal aunt of Gerard of Buonalbergo, and he then agreed to join Robert with 200 knights in exchange for Robert marrying her. I don't know why though. Like, why would he join him just so she was particularly ugly? I don't know.
Actually, okay, so we need to look into that. But some cultures, they actually pay you to marry the woman, and the logic, like actually in India, that was a custom. They call it dowry, where they give, like, you marry, and they also give you a lot of money. And the reason for it is that, like, the logic is that you are taking responsibility for that woman. So this is to help you supply for her. But in the case of this, it could be that existed in some European cultures as well.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. It just seems like this guy didn't have a lot. Like, he had 5 people. And then the dowry is like 200 knights. So I don't know. But anyway.
He probably wanted to go to this battle, but not personally risk himself. So I'm sure, like, he wouldn't have agreed to this unless he was going to get something out of it.
Yeah, probably he used his words somehow to make this wedding happen.
Wasn't it like back then, though, there was a lot of prestige attached to going into battle, and like the ruler was expected to, not like today where the rulers all sit safe and sound and send other people to get killed, but like back then you couldn't do that as easily. Like, they'd be like, why is this guy not going to any of the wars?
Yeah,
so
this is true. Yeah, actually that's part of how he became more and more powerful. So he rose to distinction through battle. So the Lombards, the Longbeards, they turned against Northmen, their previous allies, and Pope Leo IX, he wanted to expel the Normans, and he used a Swabian army, which is the southwestern part of Germany. I actually went to college there for a while. They speak some kind of weird German there. Anyway, in the dark forest. But he was able to defeat them at the Battle of Civitate sul Fortore in 1053. And Guiscard played a prominent and valiant role in this battle, which led him to receive the title as Count of Apulia. So he got a count title out of it. So through his fighting, so he was rewarded, I guess,
with land.
Yeah, and a title. And then he remarried for political reasons and allied himself with Pope Nicholas II against the Roman Emperor in the year 1059. And then followed a conquest of territory in southern Italy that was called Apulia and Calabria. And I'll put it on the map. He also tried to take Messina on Sicily, which at the time was occupied by Saracens. But he was diverted in his attempts by an army sent by Constantine X, Ducas of Byzantine. Because there were Byzantines in southern Italy at the time as well.
Yeah, they got those holdings, I think, during the time of Justinian.
Yeah, and they tried to kick the Lombards out.
Belisarius was the general, right? Who did that?
I need to check that.
I think so. Belisarius was with Justinian.
Okay. Well, Guiscard later on invaded Sicily together with his brother Roger, and he captured Messina in the year 1061. But he was unable to take another city called Enna in Sicily. But he returned in the year 1064 and bypassed Enna, going straight for the city Palermo, which is still a place today. Although his campsite was apparently infested with tarantulas and had to be abandoned.
I didn't know there are tarantulas in that part of the world.
Yeah, no, that's actually where they used to call this disease or this phenomena they had in the medieval times, where people would start dancing and wouldn't stop until they dropped dead. You heard of this before?
No.
Oh man, I'll have to do another episode about that. There were these random events in northern Europe, but also in southern Europe, where people would just start dancing. One person would start dancing in the middle of the town or the city or on a bridge or something, and then others would join in. And these people would just keep on dancing and dancing until some of them would, go into a coma, and some of them even died because they would just keep on dancing. And in Italy, they called this the tarantula disease after the spiders, because they thought that maybe these people had been bitten by spiders. But I'm not sure how being bitten by a spider would cause you to dance until you die.
That actually sounds like a TikTok thing. Like, I don't watch TikTok, but my wife does. And there's all these videos, they call it like a flash mob dance, where somebody like sets up a radio or something, not radio, like a sound system out in the streets, and they start dancing, and then all these other people start dancing with them, like with the. I guess I don't know, man. Yeah, we have to investigate that. I've never heard that before. That's so weird.
Yeah, but they do have some big spiders in Italy. And actually, I've seen them.
That's where tarantulas come from?
Well, no. I just know that's what they call them there. It's just,
I thought tarantulas.
It's just a type of spider. I think they're everywhere. They're even here in Holland. They're smaller, but they're pretty sure they're all over the world. You have wolf spiders, and tarantula is just another type of spider.
Yeah, it's a type of spider. I thought they were indigenous to like South America or Africa. I didn't know they were in Italy.
Yeah, I know you probably have really big ones in the Amazon. I know you have some tribes there that like eat them. They lure them out with little sticks, and then they capture them. Anyway, so yeah, he later on he started another campaign in the year 1072, took over Palermo, and the rest of Sicily. Was only a matter of time before it also fell. Guiscard was then referred to as Black Shirt Robert because throughout the campaign he wore elegant clothing with important dyes that ran together, resulting in black clothing. So he looked good, apparently. And then in his last enterprise, he mounted an attack on the Byzantine Empire, taking up the cause of Reichtor, which is another guy I could do an episode about, which was a monk pretending to be Pope Michael VII. No, not Pope, Emperor Michael VII of Byzantine, who had been deposed in 1078, and to whose son Guiscard's daughter had been married. He sailed with 16,000 men, including 1,300 Norman knights, against the emperor in May 1081. And then in May 1084, he marched north with 36,000 men. He entered Rome, and he forced Henry into retreat. And then there was a rebellion, which led to a 3-day sack of the city, after which Guiscard escorted the Pope to Rome. So his son, actually, at this point, he had lost the Byzantine conquest, Guiscard's son. But Guiscard returned with 150 ships to restore them, and he occupied his son there's some names here that I think aren't that relevant. But he went as far up as Croatia, where he took land. And then on July 17, 1085, he died of a fever in Cephalonia at Epirus, north of Lixouri, along with 500 knights. He was buried in the Hauteville family mausoleum of the Abbey of the Santissima Trinity at Venosa. The town of Guiscardo on Cephalonia is named after him. So this was how his life ended. So he basically fought all over the place. In the Divine Comedy, Dante sees Guiscard's spirit in the heaven of Mars, along with other warriors of the faith, who exemplify the cardinal virtue of fortitude. And in the Inferno, Dante describes Guiscard's enemy as a field of mutilated shades stretching out to the horizon. So that was the last quote. But yeah, so this was my story of this week about Robert Guiscard, the Northman, who retook Sicily and took southern Italy, as well as parts of the Balkans, and was a warrior Northman who fought alongside the Pope. So, yeah.
Seems like most of his efforts were focused on conquering and attacking other Europeans.
Yeah, except for Sicily, I guess.
See, that's true. But it's like that kind of stuff is what basically caused us to get overrun by the Muslims, at least in the East. Like if we hadn't
he also fought against the Byzantines, and I guess they were East Orthodox. So
yeah, but it's so stupid. Like when you have those kind of enemies to the East, you'd think you would put your differences aside and say, you know what, we better under any circumstance, like maintain that frontier, keep these people out. Like if you need new land, you should go and grab it from those people to the East. But I guess, in that way, our history is full of that, like fighting each other, different tribes of Europeans fighting and killing each other. And in that way, we're kind of similar to the Africans, because that's like all over Africa. That's what they do. They have these different tribes fighting and killing each other. And I think that's part of what made them so vulnerable to get colonized, during the 1800s. Earlier than the 1800s. But they're still doing it now. Like you have these different countries with different tribes, and they're more concerned to fight and kill each other. And in the meantime, like China is colonizing their land. So
yeah, on the one hand, sure, but then on the other hand, it probably also meant that they would advance in like military strategy and technology because of competition.
But imagine if he had focused all his efforts on the Muslims instead of on other Europeans. Like, how hard would it be for like the original idea of the Crusades was let the Crusaders pass through the Byzantine territory and take over the Holy Land. Like that's what they should have been doing. And I also floated the idea of taking Egypt back from the Muslims, because back then Egypt still had a Christian majority. So
Yeah, the Northmen were also looking at that, and I think they at one point they took at least they took parts of northern Africa.
that would
They
have been very good, because Egypt is like the entry point to Africa, at least overland. So if they could have taken that,
a lot of
and
food was grown. They were also the grain stores of the Byzantine Empire for a while. But like, here's my argument: is that these guys were great warriors because they were always fighting. So had they not been always fighting, they would not have been great warriors, and they wouldn't have played such an important role in the Reconquista and and the Crusades. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, I guess. Their culture makes them always fight, including with their neighbors. But then again, it also made them really good at what they did. So
I tend to see the Crusades as an egregious failure. And I think the Reconquista was a good thing, but it was a slow process, to take that back from the Muslims.
yeah, they probably would have been better off taking Egypt and northern Africa instead.
That would cut off the flow of reinforcements into Africa.
And I would have taken the pressure off Spain. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so yeah, that was my story, and was surprised to learn so much about these Northmen.
Yeah, and I heard the name before, and you mentioned Dante, so that's probably where I heard his name, and then forgot. Because I actually just a month ago I read the passages of, I read Inferno in high school, and then just recently I read the passages about Mars. Because I'm interested in the medieval cosmology and such.
Yeah.
And that's why the name sounded familiar, but I couldn't be sure. And then who was the guy that found the Lance of Longinus, or claimed that he did? I can't remember that.
Yeah.
I'll find out later.
We should do an episode on him. Yeah.
Yeah, he died I believe he died in a fire, that dude, because he was like, the lance will protect me, and he ran through this fire and died a little bit later because the lance didn't protect him after all. But anyways, yeah. Good story, man. A very good topic.
Yeah, so I wanted to close that one off on here, and let anybody know if you could like and share the video. Really appreciate it. Please leave a comment. Things you like, maybe you don't like. Some people say it sounds too much ish or too.
We haven't had that in a while.
Trying to find a balance between not just writing the whole story out and also having some freedom. But yeah, anyway, still getting better at this. Other than that, thank you for listening. And I think I would say see you in the next one. Yep.
All right.